So unless you've been living under a rock for the last year and a half, you'll know that there's been a pandemic going on. And one of the unfortunate side effects of that is that there isn't really any new movies or content, TV shows, anything like that are coming out. Nothing for me to really critique, nothing for anybody else to enjoy, which makes everybody's life miserable. Slowly but surely, however, movies are beginning to make their way back to the theaters, and moviegoers are able to go back to some semblance of the movie experience that they had beforehand. My wife and I decided that we were going to go ahead and venture out and watch one of the movies that was recently released, and we decided that we were going to try and brave Cruella, another live-action remake of a Disney classic. For those of you not particularly familiar with this universe that Disney's created, Cruella is the prequel slash intro slash standalone film slash origin story of Cruella De Vil, or Stella De Vil, and it's a prequel to the 101, 102 Dalmatians series that also features her as the main villain. If you're looking for some sort of comparison, think Maleficent as compared to Sleeping Beauty, and you basically have an exact copy. And when I say exact copy, I mean exact copy. It has the same feel, it has the same flow, it has a lot of the same atmosphere as a lot of the other movies, and it also runs into a lot of the same problems, which is what we're going to take a look at here today. But first, before I go into anything, let's give credit where it's due to the movie, because it isn't a bad movie. Let me preface this right now. It's not a bad movie. It's an okay movie. There's something that I want to touch on a little bit later in the video that will help you understand what it is that I'm trying to illustrate with this, but by no means is this a horrible movie. It's fine. First and foremost, Cruella De Vil, played by Emma Stone, is pretty much exactly what it is in the original films. Now, most of us are fairly familiar one way or another with Emma Stone's work. Most of us have seen either some variation of The Help or Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man series, and that should cover about 80% of people who watch movies in general. And she's a phenomenal actor, and also she's a very distinct actor. She actually plays this really fine line where whenever you watch an Emma Stone character, you see Emma Stone in the character, but she's not to the point where you've seen, for example, with a lot of the Harry Potter characters, they can't do anything else because all that people see is Harry Potter, Ron, Hermione, things like that. She's actually got her own little lane there that she stays in, and it's really, really well done. Cruella De Vil has always been portrayed as a maniacal mastermind, and also a little bit off kilter, and Emma Stone does a really good job of marrying both of these aspects of her character together and giving us a performance that's very compelling. Also, while it is that we're handing out congratulations, Jasper and Horace, the two side men that help Cruella De Vil do all of her evil things, they're phenomenal. They're hilarious, nuts to butts, to the end, you root for them. They're probably 80 to 90% of that trio carrying that forward. There are a lot of times where, not because of anything Emma Stone did, but because of a lot of the writing that goes into that character, you don't really root for Cruella De Vil, you don't really understand why it is that we want her to succeed, but Horace and Jasper, they themselves pull you along with them on that ride, and they really provide a lot of comedic relief, but not in a tacky one-liner kind of way, in a very personable kind of way. You feel like you're there with them, and that's where Horace specifically does a really good job. He brings you in and he makes you part of the gang. Jasper's like this really weird quasi-love interest thing, but that doesn't really materialize in the movie and doesn't make any sense in the context of the continuations or the originals. And so it's kind of weird, but he still provides a lot of that comedic relief, the same as Horace does, and there's a lot of fun stuff about it. And even though I do have a bone to pick with them, I do have to compliment the screenwriters, the story developers, on at least making the movie extremely entertaining. There's never a point wherein watching this movie that you're going to think, I'd rather be doing almost anything else. You're going to watch most of the movie wanting to know what it is that happens next, and not wanting to change the channel if you saw it on television, and wanting to finish it if you're watching it streaming or anything like that. It is a little bit tedious with some of the side things that go on. There are a few scenes that make you go, no, it kind of breaks the barrier between the audience and the film. But in terms of actually watching it and never getting bored, I never found myself getting bored. My wife didn't either. Most everybody in the theater seemed to really enjoy what it is they were watching. However, I will say, those of you who are taking kids because they've watched 101, 102 Dalmatians, you're taking them to this, thinking that they're going to understand it, I would strongly suggest that you yourself watch it first and determine whether or not you feel comfortable showing it to your kids. Not because there's anything over the top. It is a Disney movie, but it is much darker than a lot of Disney films, and there are a lot of references, a lot of things in there that they might not understand without context if they're young enough. So I would really recommend, for those of you who are watching this video as adults, watch the movie, make the decision for yourself, then let your kids see it. I would strongly recommend, especially kids under 10 years old, don't have them see this without you looking at it first. Just fair bit of warning from me. Now, as I get into some of the things that I don't like about this movie, I don't want it to be misconstrued. Again, I want to reemphasize, the movie is serviceable. It does a decent job at what it is. And that's really the problem. The movie's decent. We're not used to that from Disney. Disney went through a stretch where it was making kind of half-hearted films, but there was a lot of animated movies before that, including 101, 102 Dalmatians, that was really, really good, and a lot of people really wanted to see, and it's why it spawned so many classics. The problem is, a lot of the live-action remakes aren't great, and they also don't suck. In fact, there seems to be a consistent trend, specifically among a couple of them. They're specifically, if you look at Mulan, if you look at Maleficent, and also if you look at now Cruella, you'll notice that all of them are forgettable. Don't think I didn't see all you sexists in the comments. I see you. I know that you're there. But really, all jokes aside, if you didn't like this movie, it's not because you're a sexist. It's because Disney has a really bad track record with making live-action movies that star female characters. And for the life of me, I had no idea that it was this hard to make a good movie starring a girl. I had no idea that it would be this difficult for Disney to do. The problem here is that Disney doesn't actually ever attempt to do anything bold with a lot of their movies, specifically when they star female leads. They do a lot of cookie cutter, invert the original, change a little bit of how you think of it, maybe subvert some expectations. They do a lot of that, but they never actually move into something that's meaningful about the piece that they're doing. They never actually change your view of the character. They just kind of expound upon it, which I guess is fine if that's what you're looking for, but if you're looking for something that really changes the way that you think about it and really brings something new, they're not bringing anything new. They're just kind of expounding and giving you backstory. For example, and spoiler alert for those of you who didn't understand that this was spoilers, it's not like I put it in the title or anything. This movie is basically Batman but with black and white hair. Like, literally, that's pretty much the movie. Cruella, or Stella in the movie, has a parent that's killed by someone else, and then they go on this revenge tour to try and murder this person and try and get back at them. They realize it's really turning them inside out and they don't actually want to be that person anymore. And then they find themselves at the very end of the movie, everybody thinks that they're dead, and then they actually didn't die. Literally, I just gave you the entire plot synopsis of the entire Dark Knight trilogy. It's not that the movie's not supposed to be cheesy. The movie is supposed to be very heavy-handed on a lot of different topics. When it comes to being different, that's extremely heavily pushed in this movie, especially being very dark, being very melancholy, being very dramatic, and very okay with that. That's something the movie pushes a whole lot. Being different is good, and nobody really has a problem with that. The issue comes in that it's not that different. It's literally just a copy-paste of the character that we saw before. It doesn't really show any development. It's just they were always different, and therefore, because they were always different, they became evil. And that's kind of a weird message to push if you're Disney. I really don't understand what the message with Disney here is supposed to be. Disney movies used to have messages within them. There were usually some type of moral that they were trying to push with the story. And I know that people don't like morals in their stories, but it's usually the backbone. The thing that actually makes your story memorable is the message that it pushes, the thing that it tries to communicate to you. Not an agenda, but a simple truth about life is what it's trying to push to you. For example, a lot of people have watched the movie Pinocchio and they think, oh, well, the entire message there is don't lie. That's a very basic message of what Pinocchio really is about. But really, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, Pinocchio is about trusting your conscience and doing what's right. That's really the entire movie. Trust your conscience, do what you're supposed to, do what's right. What you're supposed to take from Pinocchio is basically trust your conscience, do what it is that you're duty-bound to do, and look at the bigger picture. Don't just do things selfishly. There's a lot of deep messages in Pinocchio that Disney actually communicated, and a lot of that has been lost with a lot of these live-action remakes because it's about the money. Like, if they just told us they were making 101 Dalmatians but leaving out the Dalmatians, really, we'd be totally cool with it. Like, okay, alright, at least you're letting us know it's a cash grab. The problem comes in that the movie's fine, but the movie doesn't really mean anything. The movie doesn't really have any meaning. And when you attach that consistently to a whole bunch of female leads, a lot of people start to think, oh, well, maybe it's a whole bunch of females that are making these movies bad. And that's not the case. The movie's fine. It's that they don't have a lot to work with. Like, the material kind of sucks. And so Emma Stone can act really, really well. She does really well at playing the character, and I've talked about this. It's really a good performance from her part. In fact, honestly, she kind of scares you at some points with how good she is. But if you look at the movie, and then you look at Mulan, and then you look at Maleficent, there's really not a whole lot of material for those actresses to work with, and it makes it really difficult for these people to actually do anything with the content that they're given. Really, at the end of the day, Cruella is just a story about a person with likely multi-personality disorder freaking out and then trying to assassinate someone who they think murdered their parent, which it's a little bit more complicated than that. I'll let you watch the movie to actually find out what happens. Spoiler alert, her mom's not actually her mom. You'll have to find out who that is. But when it comes down to it, after watching it, it's a fine movie. I wouldn't watch it again. I wouldn't recommend it to a whole lot of other people, but the movie itself is fine. There's nothing wrong with it in terms of watching it as a one-time thing to waste time. If you really like this movie, that's totally okay. That's totally your opinion. The problem that I see is that it basically ends up looking exactly like Maleficent or exactly like Mulan. And if you can't tell the difference between the movies, it's really hard to see why it is that they keep making them. It's basically just a different skin on every single one, and it's kind of boring and it's kind of annoying. I really wish that Disney would put a lot more effort into these movies and actually make something that was, well, new. Once again, this is just my opinion. Let me know if you guys think differently in the comments. Let me know if there's anything that I missed. If there's any movies that you want me to go and see and give a review on, give my take on, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to go ahead and take a look at those and see if I can get a video out for you. In the meantime, I'm Jackson, and thanks for watching.